Tonight on Free Minds TV, Kellogg drops its sponsorship of Michael Phelps and their stock price plummets. Also some disturbing new numbers about the amount of Americans caught up in the criminal justice system, and some news from the Mexican border. All that and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is the 100th episode of Free Minds TV. And welcome to a special edition of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. With you, as always, is Toby.
And Nick.
And it's a special edition of Free Minds TV because it's the 100th one. We've been doing this show for 100 episodes now, Nick.
Well, you have. I haven't been on the show for the full 100 episodes. I think I came on episode 30-something.
Yeah, you've been on here for over half the time, though, and it's been quite the run. We've done a lot in the past couple of years. I think we started way back in November of 2006 was when we first started rolling the cameras. Back then, like you said, it was myself and Dale Manning in front of the camera and a whole lot of other people behind the scenes. Now we have like 10 people working behind the scenes that weren't here before, but they've come on board and will continue to help make the show a whole lot better. When we first started doing the show, we pretty much were interviewing just basic people who were around the area, people involved in small government, because we were really just on Cheshire TV, and that was our audience. Since then, though, we've been branching out to other people and marketing out to other people. But those first few shows, they were more based on a lot more local content, because we were just on in Keene, New Hampshire. Since then, we've broadened out to other stations around the country, as well as a much larger audience on the internet as well. When you came on the show, we started interviewing a few more prominent guests. We went out, and one of the first things you did with us is going out and interviewing Richard Van Wickler, who's the superintendent in the county prison system here in Keene, New Hampshire.
Yeah, and it was an interesting interview because Richard's one of the few people in law enforcement who's currently, I guess he's more in the criminal justice system, but he's one of the few people working for the criminal justice system currently who is opposed to the war on drugs. There are a lot of former cops who have come out and now oppose the war on drugs. Most of them are members of LEAP, which is Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Richard's a member, but he's still actively working at the county jail.
As you said, there are others, the people who are involved. One of the people we interviewed was Barry Cooper from NeverGetBusted.com. He also is now engaged in a new project called Cop Busters, where he's reversing the sting and bringing them to the police officers. So we've gotten to interview quite a number of people. He was an interesting one to interview because, as far as I know, he's the only person out there trying to sting the cops and get them in trouble for illegal raids. So
yeah, and he might be getting a network deal, I've heard out of that. So Cop Busters may be on a television station near you, not just online.
Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll get another interview with him in the future. Some other people that we've been interviewing as of late, Andrew Carroll. We've been covering his marijuana activism that's been going on here in the Free State of New Hampshire, what's hoping to be the Free State of New Hampshire. We also have been following Matt Simon from New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense, as well as a few other activists involved in that. Another prominent guest that's been on the show and really helped Free Minds TV and especially Free Minds Radio is Ian Bernard. He's been a huge help to this show, and we've interviewed him a number of different times, primarily, I guess, about the couch incident. So if you've been watching Free Minds TV for a while or you're familiar with the Keene movement, you'll definitely be familiar with Ian Freeman's illegal couch.
And Ian, we still, mostly myself, still sit in on Ian's radio show on Tuesday nights from 7 to 10 Eastern Time. You can go there at freetalklive.com.
And he's helped us to, create the radio show that we do from his same studio, Free Minds TV, which is on Sundays from 3 to 5 p.m.
Oh, that'd be Free Minds Radio.
Free Minds Radio, that's correct. Some other things we've done, we traveled to PorcFest. That was before you were even involved in the show. We went out there and did a live special. We also did it again.
I was involved with the next one.
And so we'll be going back again this year because Free Minds TV is all around, but that's definitely going to be one of the favorite places to go. We've also been covering Pumpkin Fest. Were you one Pumpkin Fest, or were you both Pumpkin Fests?
I've been 2 Pumpkin Fests.
So you were both Pumpkin Fests?
Yes, I was. And so getting a little bit of local content out there for our Keene viewers, because, Keene is our hometown. That's where, we shoot the show in the studio at Cheshire TV, so we kind of went out there and covered that local event for the Keene viewers. Yeah,
another thing, some prominent guests that we've interviewed. We went out there on the presidential campaign trail. We got to interview Ron Paul and went to a number of his happenings around the state of New Hampshire. as he was campaigning up here during the primary season. We also got a chance to interview Dennis Kucinich, who's pretty much the opposite of Ron Paul on the Democratic side. We don't agree on everything, but at least he's honest. And he did say in the interview, which was posted online as a standalone and got tons of views, that he would have picked Ron Paul as his running mate. So he got him to say that. That
was our most popular YouTube clip ever, because it had the words Ron Paul in there, and that got you quite a few views on YouTube at the time.
That is correct. One of the lesser known presidential candidates we interviewed was George Phillies, Libertarian presidential candidate only here in New Hampshire. Maybe a couple of other states didn't really get all that much
Bob
recognition.
Barr, one of the pretty much the only real Libertarian in the race, and only in New Hampshire. I think he was on in Mass too, wasn't he?
We also, maybe. We also tried to interview some other candidates, local ones, such as Delmar Burridge. We couldn't get him on the show, but we did place a chicken in his place instead. So we've even interviewed a chicken on the show as well.
Yeah, as far as I know, that's the only use of a farm animal inside the Cheshire TV studio. So that was a first and only for Cheshire TV, as far as I'm aware of. Maybe somebody else has done it, but I haven't seen it.
Well, there's been a whole lot of Free Minds TV in the past. You can check out the archives. Most of them are available on the free side at freemindstv.com. But if you want to check all of them out, check out the member section. It's only $3 a month or $30 a year. You can learn more about that at freemindstv.com. Hopefully more is best to come, because as you see, we still don't have a set. We've got some fancy new graphics, but a set is still to come as the show gets more professional. So hopefully the next 100 episodes will be even better. All right, we have a ton of news to cover today. We're probably going to have to do a bonus segment for the members side because, well, we just have too much content to cover here on tonight's show. I wanted to start with some disturbing new numbers that I heard on the radio yesterday. I was driving home and I heard the news announcer say that 1 in 88 people in New Hampshire, 1 in 88 adults in New Hampshire are currently in the criminal justice system, either behind bars or awaiting trial to be put behind bars or on probation, somehow caught up. I was like, that's awful, 88 people. Then I found out that New Hampshire is the best in the nation. Most other states are much, much worse than us. In fact, national numbers show that 31 adults, 1 in 31 adults, is currently behind bars. That's 5.1 million people, not behind bars, I'm sorry, in the criminal justice system. So either behind bars or awaiting trial to be put behind bars or on probation. That's a whole lot of people who are involved in the criminal justice system.
It certainly is, and in a country that's supposed to be the land of the free. We did report on how the United States is the #1 incarcerator, ahead of supposedly communist China and Russia and any other police state you can think of. The United States incarcerates a larger number and a larger percentage of its population than China or Russia.
And if people out there are wondering which state is the worst, well, it's Georgia. 1 in 13 adults is currently behind bars, awaiting trial to be put behind bars or on probation.
That's almost, that's getting close to 10% of the population is in some phase of the criminal justice system.
Is this a free country? Is this the free land of the free that you always thought you lived in? I don't think so. The land of the free doesn't put more people behind bars than any other country in the world. And we have a relatively small population, as you said. It's disgusting. It's because of all these vice crimes and neighbors not watching out for neighbors to make sure that all freedoms aren't trampled on. Yeah, maybe you don't care about the war on drugs, but your neighbor sure might. Meanwhile, your neighbor should care about, what you do in your bedroom, because maybe the rest of the country doesn't care about that. It's important for all of us to care about all of our liberties, all of our rights, all of our freedoms. Otherwise, well, we're all going down separately. It's pretty disgusting stuff going on. You know, one of the reasons, as I said, this vice system that we've got going on, but there's also some other stuff. Here in Keene, New Hampshire, Dave Ridley, today, on the day we're filming, was just arrested for simply trying to videotape a trial of another Free Stater who was actually arrested for a vice crime, a victimless crime. And he went in there, tried to videotape it as a member of the press, and was arrested for trying to videotape it in the land of the free. There's another person who's caught up in the criminal justice system. Yeah, that's a free country. It's disgusting.
Yeah, theoretically, you're supposed to have a public trial, but in this case, they didn't want people to be able to videotape it, which supposedly you're able to do in New Hampshire. But if the judge doesn't like what you're doing, he can tell you not to do it and throw you in jail.
Yeah, and you know, do you want to pay for that? I don't want to pay for that. Let's just say, you know what, I don't even like their activism, so I don't care. Well, you're the one who gets to pay these thousands and thousands of dollars to put these activists, or otherwise just people who are trying to live their lives as best they see fit behind bars when they haven't hurt a soul.
Yeah, and if you're interested in this particular case, from what I heard, they did actually ban other people with video cameras who are from, I think the local radio station had somebody come out. I think they were going to shoot a clip, and they weren't allowed in either. So they're not just targeting one person. It is a threat to anybody who wants to videotape a trial or report on it.
As I said, this news is just coming out today. If you want to learn more, you can log on to freekeene.com is the blog where they're posting all the news and video from this, but we'll be reporting on it in the future. For now, I wanted to move on. Let's stay in the criminal justice field and move over to a video clip where a deputy, a sheriff's deputy by the name of Paul Sheehan, decided to beat the crap out of a 15-year-old girl. Why? Well, she did kick her shoes at him, as you can see playing in the video. She
Not
kicked
very
her,
hard.
No, she kicked them at her a little bit. She kicked her shoes at him, and he decided to plant her face into the wall, tackle her, punch her a couple of times, grab her by the hair, drag her outside. Then you can see him wandering back in to check for blood on the walls that might need to be wiped up because, you know, he couldn't have just shut the door or anything. That would have been much too easy.
Well, you don't want to leave too much evidence behind. Apparently, he was a little bit concerned that what he was doing could get him in hot water. I don't think he ever imagined that the tape would get out in the way that it did. I know.
Well, he claims self-defense in the whole.
Well, that's what he claims, but it seems clear to me that the attorney for him didn't want the tape to get out, and he seemed to be looking for evidence towards the end of the film. So I'm thinking he knew what he was doing was illegal.
And it's just plain wrong. I mean, what would we do if the video camera wasn't there? This is why you need to allow video cameras in your courtrooms, because, I mean, when people aren't being watched, well, who's watching the watchers? There are no watchers, and they're not allowed to be there. It's just...
Especially when you're dealing with a judge or police officers, because if they do something to you, if they hurt you or if they act inappropriately, if you take that to court on just your word against theirs, the court's going to side with the police officer or the judge every time. So unless you get the videotape, you don't have a case.
Right, and this was coming out of King County, Washington, and as I said, Deputy Paul Sheehan, and we'll be seeing if he actually sees any prison time for this. Chances are he'll probably get some paid leave or something, I don't know. Every now and then they lock people up. We did report last week on a police officer being locked up after he tackled a bike rider, a bicyclist, for absolutely no reason. He got locked up because that was caught on video. Maybe we'll see the same in this case as well. All right, Nick, well, we can't do anything about this ourselves personally. Maybe some people want to call up the office over there in King County and let them know what their opinions are on it. Well, they're probably not going to listen. Some people that are at least supposed to listen to you, though, are your useless representatives in Washington, D.C. Every week we like to highlight something that's important for them to be looking at. And that's the downside with the Downsizer Dispatch. What do we got on tap for us this week, Nick?
Well, this week's Downsizer Dispatch is talking about President Obama's mention in his address to Congress of the cap and trade system for carbon. Now, this is especially relevant right now because the economy just isn't doing very well. And cap and trade is something that would put a real burden on the economy. Basically, for those who don't know, what cap and trade would do is it would set a limit or a cap for carbon emissions for all of the United States, all the companies, all the industry, all the activity going on in the U.S. Then it would create a system where companies could trade around these carbon credits because the sum has to remain at the limit or under the limit, but these companies can trade their credits for cash. But essentially what it's going to do is it's going to artificially limit the amount of energy that's available for industry to use, and it's going to inflate the prices because essentially what it is a tax on carbon. And you emit carbon every time you turn the ignition in your car. Factories emit carbon pretty much round the clock when they make any kind of consumer good. Basically, we use fossil fuels for just about everything in our economy. Most of our energy comes from fossil fuels. And some people are worried about global warming, but this probably isn't the best way to get new technologies developed if you are concerned about carbon emissions. I do find it ironic that there was, earlier this week, a protest in Washington, D.C. at one of the coal-burning power plants down there against global warming, trying to get more government action to be taken. And, of course, they got hit with a snowstorm and cold weather. So
well, there you go.
They were out there protesting global warming in the snowstorm in Washington, D.C.
You know, Nick, Obama preaches all this stuff about save the earth, stop driving so much, yet he's building all these new roads? What's he expect us to do? Not drive on
That's
them?
a good question. If you're building an infrastructure that's really designed to burn carbon, designed for people in their vehicles, why are you going to tax it? I guess the idea is that they want you to drive the cars. They just want to inflate the amount that they tax gasoline so that they can get more money out of it.
Well, you know what I say? We're going to burn up all the oil on the planet eventually. Let's just get it over with. Anyways, you probably have a different opinion. We'd love to hear it. fmtv@freemindstv.com is the email address. You can also, well, you can contact us in some other ways. They're up on our website. Log on at freemindstv.com. You can go to the contact section to learn more and let us know what you think about this, because I'm sure we've infuriated a whole lot of you. A lot of you probably also agree. When we come back, we're going to be doing more of the same. We're going to be talking about the stock market taking a huge hit, including Kellogg's cereal, who recently dropped Michael Phelps. I'm going to correlate the two and say, well, their stock went down because they dropped him. I don't know. We'll get into that story and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by Life Productions for your basic and semi-pro video production needs. From full wedding and event coverage to DVD authoring and distributions, lifeproductions.com. That's lyfproductions.com.
This edition of whatever it is you're watching is brought to you by
Ridley Report, something, Ridley Report.
Am I on? Am I on? Do I talk now? Do I talk now? I'm Gardner Goldsmith,
I think
and
she's up by where they're doing the show.
you're watching Free Minds TV. Open your mind, baby. Tell others to do the same.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. As always, it's Toby here with you.
And Nick?
All right, Nick, we've got a story about the stock market. Well, chances are you've already heard this story by the time you're hearing our voices, but chances are we'll be able to put a new spin on it. And that's having to do with why the stock market fell so much. Nick, you've got the story. Just how much have we lost in the stock market?
Well, earlier this week, the stock market finished at its lowest levels in 12 plus years. The Dow finished at a little over 6,700. By the time you're hearing this, the Dow might be closer to 6,000, or who knows, 5,000. A lot of analysts are saying that the Dow could go down as low as 5,000, the S&P to 500, and this is something that very few people were saying a couple of years ago, the exception being, well, I think we were kind of predicting a major economic problem, and we were pretty much right. Ron Paul was one of the few politicians out there saying that we had an economic crisis looming on the horizon. He got laughed at the debates about that, but in hindsight, he was the only one who was right about it. I frankly don't know how bad it's going to get from here, but at this point, it seems like the attitude's starting to shift. Most people aren't looking for a quick recovery. They aren't expecting that it's going to be a great time to invest in the stock market tomorrow or next week or next month.
Well, I think this has a lot to do with people don't want to invest in the stock market because, well, has the bubble popped yet? And the federal government isn't allowing the bubble to pop. Yes, we have a huge bubble, several of them that are screwing up the entire economic system that not only we have here in the United States, but is pretty much global at this point. It's an economic system that's, well, it's created by the government and their governmental policies. They create these huge balloons, these huge bubbles that eventually burst. Well, it's not until those bubbles burst that you can get down to basics and find how much these stocks are actually worth.
And the government intervention is definitely fueling a lot of the uncertainty because on the one hand, investors think that, hey, maybe all this government intervention is going to somehow, they're pumping all this money to the system, maybe the market's going to recover a lot quicker than we thought. But on the other hand, they're also saying, well, the government's looking at nationalizing banks and they're increasing the national debt, so there's a possibility that they're going to make this crisis worse, that they're going to prolong it, which is probably more likely than that they're going to fix it. But it creates uncertainty that wouldn't be there if they simply let the market fall on its own to whatever its true bottom happens to be, and then it builds back up from there. That's what you have to allow happen if you want a recovery to take place. And it would probably happen a lot faster if the government wasn't involved. Before we had a lot of central planning and central banking, recessions tended to be pretty deep, but they also tended to be pretty quick. We didn't hear about the Depression of 1908 because it only lasted for about a year. And we had another depression right after World War I. We don't remember that. We do remember the Great Depression because the government made it great.
They went right in there trying to fix the problem, but I don't know how you can count on the same people to fix the problem that created it in the first place. I mean, we predicted this economic collapse that we're currently in now. Will the predictions of the government's meddling in it make it worse? I don't know. We'll check back with you guys in a couple of years. Hopefully, we'll still be on the air. All right, I want to move on to one company in particular that's taken quite the hit ever since Kellogg decided to drop them. Yes, this company is Kellogg's Cereal. They decided to drop a sponsorship of Michael Phelps because of the famous bong toking picture that was snapped of him, was published, put out on the internet, and people were furious. How can this guy who was an excellent swimmer ever imbibe in some kind of an illegal substance? For shame. Well, personally, it seems like a handicap for me. I mean, smoking marijuana can't be all that great for swimming. It just shows, well, he's real strong. But Kellogg decided to drop him, and since then, well, things have not been going all that great for Kellogg. Little did they know, a lot of people in America, well, they don't really demonize pot smokers. Their friends or neighbors might smoke pot. Most people actually know someone they're very close to who uses the substance because, well, maybe they prefer it over alcohol or something, and it's really not hurting anyone. Their stock has actually fell several percentage points. It was once 9th out of 5,600 companies that were some of the best in the entire world. It's fallen to 83rd now. So that's quite the drop. Maybe it's just a correlation with the whole stock market falling in general. I don't know. I'm saying, you know what? There's probably a lot of people who were just pretty upset about that.
I think they were the only company that pulled their sponsorship, which is fine. I mean, it's their company. They can sponsor.
And now they suffer for it.
Right. I mean, they can sponsor whoever they want or pull their sponsorship. And yeah, consumers can respond. That's the great thing about a market economy is that the companies can sponsor whoever they want, run their business. Well, in a truly free market, they could run it how they wanted. In America, they can sort of run it how they want. And consumers can decide to buy their products because they like what the company does or not buy them. So I don't know if it had any actual bearing on their stock price.
It happened immediately after. This didn't go with the whole other market crash that's been happening beforehand. Previously, their stock was doing just fine, and as soon as they announced that they were dropping him as a sponsor, their stock went straight down.
I guess they could give him a sponsorship again and see if it improves things.
There we go. Then we'd know for sure. Until then, it's just speculation. I have mine. Maybe you have yours. Who knows what's right? That's the beautiful thing about correlation. Correlation does not always equal causation, but it's definitely a fodder for a good argument. All right, moving right along, Nick, you've got some new news about coming from the Mexican border. We've been covering this story with the drug war that's been going on now. What's the latest?
Well, we have reported on how drug war violence is beginning to cross over the border in some places in border states. But it looks like the United States might be taking a more active role outside of its borders in this drug war, making it a lot more of a war. On March 1st, in an interview with NBC, Defense Secretary Robert Gates said that the U.S. is in a position to provide more help to the Mexican government in its fight against drug cartels. He said that the drug war was a serious problem. I'd agree with him there. The drug war is a serious problem. And he says that the United States could be providing things like intelligence, surveillance, and training to Mexico. That seems to imply to me that U.S. units would be taking some kind of role in surveilling Mexican territory. He's not saying we're going to send in the Army or the Marine Corps to actually do the fighting, but essentially we're going to be taking an active role in the internal affairs of Mexico.
That's almost like going to war, in a sense. If we're using the United States military to fight what they call a war on drugs, are we now in officially another war?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the U.S. has had, throughout its history, has tended to send the military into Mexico when things get a little rough there, which hasn't done, it's one of the reasons that Mexico is sort of the backwards country that it is. I mean, it is not a great place to live by any standard, and that's largely due to the U.S. screwing it up on a few different occasions throughout history. There is concern that the Mexican government itself, at least according to the CIA and some other government agencies, the government in Mexico could face rapid and sudden collapse. So they believe that the drug war violence could actually cause a collapse in Mexico. That I could see that provoking politicians to send the military in an active role.
All right, Nick. So they're talking about sending in the military, all these huge, expensive things that, well, it's just trying more of the same. We've already tried these tactics in the past, and we've seen how they fail. Is there any debate or at least discussion on reforming our drug laws, maybe ending this senseless war on drugs? I mean, if we're ready ready to send in the military, start a whole conflict here, maybe invade Mexico. Are we thinking outside the box a little bit and looking at other strategy, at least talking about them?
I think the American people are having that debate among themselves. The average person, the average citizen is open, a lot of them are open to the idea of changing drug policy because we have seen that over the decades that the current policies have been in place, they've failed miserably. They've been counterproductive. They haven't reduced drug use. They've caused all kinds of violence. They've driven black market profits to criminal elements, often violent criminal elements. I mean, these cartels in Mexico are, for the most part, terrible, violent people. So I think the American people want to have that debate, but there is a big disconnect, not just in drug policy, but with all kinds of policies, where the politicians are going to hold the status quo regardless of what the American people want to do.
Well, there's big bucks in it for them. I mean, the people who are voting on this stuff and making the decisions, the decision makers here, well, their pockets are heavily lined with different organizations, such as people who supply weaponry for the military. Well, those people, their stock prices are going up because now their products that they're selling, well, they're going to Mexico to fight a war.
Not to mention the people who supply the guerrillas in Mexico.
Right.
I mean,
there's
there
profit
are
on both
manufacturers who
sides.
supply
So
them.
what you need to do is find the source of the problem, the central issue, as you will, and extinguish the source. I mean, when you're fighting a fire, ask any firefighter, do you just go after the flames, the ones that are popping out the windows? You could spray those until the entire structure is burnt to the ground. If you're not going after the source, where the heat's begun, where the real heart of the fire is, well, you're just going to waste all your water and get nothing done. So
that's what we've been doing for 40 years or so.
So we have a profit motive on each side, one with the drug cartels and one with our policymakers. What we need to do is take away the incentive for their decision making, which is, well, the profit. Take that away and see what we have. How would we do that? Yeah, we'd have to really think outside the box and debate ending this senseless war on drugs. And I think if you walked up to your average person here in America or in Mexico, I think that they would admit that the war on drugs has failed. Whether they're in favor of legalizing drugs, decriminalizing drugs, whatever their personal stance is, I think that most people at this point, besides the politicians out there and maybe the police chiefs, the ones who are really invested in this, I think most people admit that we've lost this war on drugs.
Yeah, and I will just throw a quick aside out there. The war on drugs it's not just something that affects your civil liberties if you're a drug user or somebody who hangs out with drug users. We've lost a lot of the protections we have against unreasonable searches and seizures as a result of the drug war. We've lost a lot of our financial privacy, banking regulations that allow the government all kinds of control over your money, the ability to freeze your assets and investigate your money transfers. Those are a result of the war on drugs, and even the Second Amendment. A lot of people are calling for more restrictive gun laws, doing away with the so-called gun show loophole, because at least they claim that that's where the cartels in Mexico get their weapons. I'm not 100% sure about that. I think a lot of their weaponry is probably coming from other countries as well. But it's something that affects all of your freedoms, not just freedoms of drug users, but freedoms for all Americans, all different issues.
Another huge thing that it does is it puts 1 in 31 American adults, yes, that's 1 in 31, puts them in the criminal justice system and ties them into all of that. Costs all of us a whole lot of money. So if you're not thinking from the civil liberties perspective, think about your pocketbook. That's going to do us for us. Send us your feedback. fmtv@freemindstv.com is the email address. freemindstv.com is the website. You can get all the contact info, archives of the show, the member site, ways you can help the show, all at freemindstv.com. It's been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
Have a great night.
Yep.
I'm audio taping. I'll approach in a minute and a half to be arrested for attempting to videotape in the courtroom. And I'm now videotaping here also.
You can't videotape here either.
I'm going to respectfully decline to comply with your request. I am prepared to be arrested rather than...
That's fine. As you can see, you've already read the orders, the standing orders. Okay.
Did I say that I'd read them?
Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by AnarchyInYourHead.com, a comic about freedom. When it comes to politics, they hate just about everyone, so they're bound to make fun of someone that you don't like eventually. AnarchyInYourHead.com, that's AnarchyInYourHead.com.
In the year 1270, an unseen storm is brewing. An ancient blade guards its secrets. A reluctant hero dreams of destiny. Dark forces plot from the shadows. And a chance encounter changes everything. Cowardice is not an option. Heart of the Ronin by Travis Hierman. Available in hardcover February 18th on Amazon.com. For more information, visit the author's site at TravisHierman.com.